Good evening. Calling to order Tuesday, January 22nd, 2019 Finance Committee meeting. Committee members present this evening, myself as Chair, Councilor Di Natale. Also on the committee, Councilors Boschman and Walsh. Councilor Zarella indicated to me just now that he's 5 to 10 minutes late, stuck in traffic, and President Kuchmarek informed me he will be missing tonight's meeting. We will start with... we're going to take councilors some items out of order here tonight. We're going to move 01819, the very last item on the agenda, all the way to the front, and that is an order that there being hereby is appropriated the sum of $267,772, same to be charged against available funds and credited to fire personal services and fire personal services overtime. Just reading the communication from the Human Resources Director, Susan Davis, dated January 9 of this year to the Mayor. Dear Mayor Di Natale, kindly be advised that negotiations for fiscal year 2019 with the International Association of Firefighters Local 3128, Fitchburg Permanent Firefighters Association have concluded. I have attached the signed memorandum of agreement pertaining to this CBA. As a result of these successful negotiations, I am requesting an appropriation from available funds in the amount of $267,770. This amount represents $200,886 for the terms of the collective bargaining agreement, associated retroactive wages, and additional departmental payroll. Ms. Davis, and also present is Fire Chief Kevin Roy. Anything you'd like to add to the letter?
I think we're good, Council.
We're good.
Could you just quickly identify any of the substantive changes beyond the, is there any language changes, anything that jumps out other than the wage increases, obviously? Is there anything new to this contract, edited in this contract? There
is not. This, we were desirous of getting this on a one-year schedule, which is why this is a one-year contract. We already will be meeting Thursday for the next contract, and in those we'll see some changes.
So these are wage changes reflective of FY19 only?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
Correct. And that's all that changed here, just the increases, no other language changes.
Not anything substantive. I mean, we cleaned up some swap duty language, more housekeeping kind of things, but nothing that's substantive other than the wage.
Can you just state very quickly so this says it's a 2% wage increase effective July 1st, 2018, and that 2% is pretty much what this 267 represents?
The 267 is the contract, which really is around 256, and then plus the additional payroll supplemental budget.
Okay. So 90+% of it is the 2%?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
There was
go
ahead. Councilor, there was a few things. The first item on the ladder company, this was a safety issue that both the union and myself have looked at for a while. This puts 3 guys on our one ladder company. We had 2 ladder companies for a number of years, one in Clegon and one headquarters. And when we put the one in Clegon out of service, whenever we could, we ran 3 guys on the one ladder downtown. And that was really a safety issue for our people and for the citizens. So that solidifies a 3rd firefighter. We did clean up a few other things that help us on our end. One is the length of time on job bids. It helps us save some overtime if we can move people more quickly when job bids become open. That helped us on our end. So,
one other thing was on the education with the EMTs, in terms of making the additional, they have additional $1,500 stipend. It's not going to incur any kind of overtime, comp time, or anything else, but it is for their EMT certification.
And that's new?
That is. I mean, my thought and belief is that if that is something that is required for their job, I think that we need to be paying for that.
Just trying for transparency's sake for the public, just to understand the crux of the changes here, that's all.
And in addition to that, on EMT, the state changed to the national EMT not that long ago, in the last couple of years, and that is now $250 they have to pay out of their pocket, and at times they have to come in on their own time to get recertified. They have to get recertified every 2 years.
And every firefighter has to to have EMT certification?
Every firefighter, some of the ones over 15 year are grandfathered. Currently, there is 3 firefighters that don't have it. They're senior firefighters. Everybody else now does. Coming on the job, they
Is that
have
a matter of state law?
No, that's in his contract.
That's in the contract?
Yep,
Okay.
absolutely.
Councilor Zarella, who's also on the committee, has just joined us. Barring any questions from the committee, I just wanted to state, as I have in the past, that can't thank enough the job that our men and women in the Fitchburg Fire Department do every day for the protection of the citizens of Fitchburg. And I believe a 2% raise in 1 year is more than adequate for, not adequate, but it's a small price to pay for the amount of work these guys do and what they do every day to put their lives on the line for the protection of us. So it does not go unnoticed by this council and this committee. And I want to thank you all for your service, well-deserved, and keep doing what you're doing. You make this city proud. Speaking on the item, Councilor Boschman.
Chief, I noticed here it says personal service and overtime. All these guys here tonight, they're not on overtime, are they?
Only about half of them. Councilor, none of them are on overtime.
And then my next question is for Ms. Davis. You're already talking about a new contract for the fire department. Is the city shooting for 3 years or 5-year contract?
3.
3? All right.
Any other questions? I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion, we accept the contract.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to adopt 01819. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we will start at the top of the agenda. Get my ducks in a row here. 00419, an order that the City of Fitchburg hereby approves the expenditure of funds from the Department of Fire Services grant in the approximate amount of $1,500 for the purpose of said grant, which is to maintain the recently purchased new regional fire safety house used in teaching fire safety. Letter from Chief Roy to the mayor on December 17th of last year. Dear Mayor, I am requesting the city accept the student awareness of fire education grants awarded to the Fitchburg Fire Department by the state's Executive Office of Public Safety. This grant is in the amount of $1,500 for maintenance of the Regional Fire Safety House, which is stored and maintained here in Fitchburg. This training trailer is used frequently throughout the year by our SAFE instructors, as well as by other local area fire departments to teach fire education. Chief Roy, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, just on all 3 of these, the next 3, Counselor, they all pertain to SAFE. I actually didn't think we were going to get the $1,500 this year because I reported to the council a few months ago. We received a new SAFE trailer, so we actually have 2 right now. The new one's not in service, but thanks to the hard work of Lieutenant Phil Jordan, we were able to get this additional $1,500, which is going to help us do some work on the new trailer, which will break out in the spring. And on the other 2 grants, we also are SAFE instructors currently, firefighter Nick Landry and firefighter Matt Fraticelli, and they do a great job going in. They work on these grants themselves in addition to our clerical staff in our department. So they really do a good job with this. It's money well spent, and many times it's paid its dividends with children knowing what to do in an emergency situation.
So if the committee doesn't mind, I'm going to take them all together. So the next item was 00519, the City of Fitchburg approves the expenditure of funds from the Commonwealth of Mass Executive Office of Public Safety and Security SAFE grant in the approximate amount of $5,454 for the purpose of said grant, which is to continue to teach fire safety to children in elementary schools. And then 00619, a $2,800 grant for SAFE grant for the purpose of the grant, which is to teach senior citizens about the importance of fire safety and avoiding, in particular, cooking and electrical fires. Councilor Boschman.
I have a question on 006-819, senior citizens. Do you have any special locations where you go? Like, do you go to St. Joseph House or Antler Shoe Place, Heritages?
Council, I know you brought this up last time. Lieutenant Jordan's worked very hard at this. You brought up the outreach, and I'll let him explain some of the things we did in the last year for that.
Over the last year, we did about 10 community events. Out of those 10 community events, I'm trying to recall numbers. I don't have them in front of me. but at least 4 of them were going directly into the housing of the elderly high-rise facilities. I know that we did St. Joseph's, 279 Daniel Street, 245 River Street, the Sundial, and a few of those were a direct relation to a couple building fires that we had working with the chief and the firefighters. When we found out there were some issues of misuse of stoves or some fire safety issues, the safe instructors, Matt Fraticelli, Nick Landry, and myself actually reached out to these facilities that were having a few of the more prominent fires, and we did some prescriptive training through classroom session there. for
Now,
the
I
tenants.
noticed you go up to Daniel Heights quite a bit, too?
No, not that often.
For fire calls, you mean, Counselor?
Huh?
For fire calls, you mean?
Well, yeah, for fire calls, I ought to teach them up there. A lot of people don't have cars, and I noticed the fire trucks up there quite a bit. Every time I'm up there working on my house, I notice there's a call. So I was just wondering.
No, we've been typically dealing with the high-rise facilities or the multifamily facilities. Those are more under the 50 Day Street, the Housing Authority. They do work with us directly on need, and they come in and ask directive questions us for individual house walkthroughs because they're more apartment-style living. We have not done Daniel Heights directly with a general safety, but we do try to do all of the city, as you've seen us at all of the events for the Fitchburg High School events for elders, the senior citizen events for elders. We try to make ourselves out there. So if they were to call us with a direct issue, if the fire safe program doesn't deal with them, I have dealt with those people, Mr. Moses down there directly for individual cases of that revolve around fire or water instances or just personal safety.
And we do deal with them, Counselor, on medical calls also. When our crews find something that isn't appropriate, we reach out to the Housing Authority. And they've been pretty good. As you know, there's laws that they can only do so much, and it takes time sometimes, but we do reach out when we have problems in those facilities.
Okay, that was it. Thank you.
Counsel Walsh?
Thank you. I just want to congratulate the Chief and Lieutenant Jordan for obtaining these grants. It's about $10,000 that improves the safety for the citizens of Fitchburg, and it's money that's not coming out of our pocket. So thank you very much for your hard work.
Motion to approve 004 through 00619.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 004 through 00619. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Thank you, Counselors.
Next, councilors, I'm going to move 01319 next for Chief Martineau. An order that there being hereby is appropriated the sum of $24,513 to be charged against available funds and credited to police capital expenditures, building repairs for the purpose of replacing 2 of 3 HVAC units at the police station. And a letter from the chief to the mayor on November 5th of last year. Dear Mayor, the Fitchburg Police Department is respectfully requesting a supplemental appropriation of funds for the FY19 budget that would be used to replace 2 of the 3 HVAC units in our building, along with a roof exhaust fan. The figured quote by MPC Services is $24,513. As you are aware, Unit Number 3 completely stopped working recently and was determined not fixable by the City of Fitchburg mechanical contractor. Additionally, it was determined that Unit 3 was in the same condition as Unit Number 2. It has been recommended that both Units 2 and 3 should be replaced immediately. While investigating the HVAC units, it was also discovered the exhaust fan used to vent the 3 lavatories on the 3rd floor of the department headquarters was not functioning, requiring replacement. Chief, anything you'd like to add?
Make a motion on 013-19.
Second?
Motion has been made and seconded on 01319. I just, out of courtesy, would like the chief, if he has anything to add to the letter.
No, other than the letter, this is the beginning of a larger project. We're just very grateful that we were able to take care of 2 of them. The next one's the big one, the larger HVAC unit on the roof, but we were in dire straits when these went down, so thank you. Appreciate it.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve 01319. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next, I will take on 2 of the DPW items that are listed on here. Commissioner Laxo is present, beginning with 01419. Order that there be and hereby is appropriated the sum of $58,594 to be charged against the federal funds and credited to DPW Highway Personal Services Labor, $38,594, and Parks Personal Services Labor, $20,000. In a letter from the Commissioner to the Mayor on September 17th of last year, he respectfully requests that the Mayor and City Council provide interim funding for one position each in the Parks and Streets Division of DPW. Both positions are heavy special motor equipment operators and are currently held by employees who have been out of work on workmen's compensation since last year. The Parks employee has been out several times for extended periods, most recently since August 2017, and the Streets employee has been out since June of 17. It is medically confirmed that both employees are physically unable to return to their positions. One employee is applying for accidental disability retirement, and the other should be going through the process shortly. DPW has been responsible for paying the wages of both employees since they were injured. In effect, the injured employees are taking up two positions until they are finally placed on ADR, which will likely take another 9 months. This is greatly contributing to the manpower shortage in the DPW. Understaffed to begin with, we have several other employees out on long-term illness in addition to the 2 workers' comp cases. Between illnesses, injuries, and normal time off, our streets crew is usually short 2 full crews on any given day. The Parks crew has been reduced from 4 full-time employees to 2 full-time employees, and the temporary seasonal help will be done very soon. In the past, the city has allowed DPW to replace workers who were in the ADR process by providing funding from the workman's comp account to pay the injured workers. This freed up funds from the DPW budget to hire permanent replacements for the injured employees. It is my understanding that there is not adequate funding in this account to pay for the 2 employees at this time. Therefore, I am requesting $58,594 from available funds so we can immediately hire 2 heavy motor equipment operators for 9 months to replace those who will be placed on ADR. As noted above, it is expected that the ADR process will be complete in 9 months. At that time, DPW will then be in a position to pay their wages from the regular budget. Commissioner, is there anything you'd like to add to that letter?
No, that pretty much explains it all. We do have a couple of employees who are out on, extended illnesses in addition to the workers' comp cases, so, put us in a bind. So we did go ahead and, since this was written in September, we did hire the 2 people to replace those that are on workers' comp just to get us through the rest of the year. Then they'll be accounted for in the normal budget next year.
Council Boschman.
One question for you. We already know that you're on this staff. To make you staff better, how many employees would you say you needed to act a good public safety department?
If you go back to the pre-proposition 2.5 days, we had about 140. Now we have about 18, so we've gone down quite a bit. But if we had another half a dozen anyway, that would make a big difference.
No help and nothing? All right.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 14-19. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Taking 15-19 next. Order that there be and hereby is appropriated the sum of $400,000 to be charged against available funds and credited to the following accounts for MS4 stormwater compliance. DPW admin expenses, MS4 contract services, $300,000. DPW admin personal services, MS4 temporary labor, $75,000. And DPW admin personal services, MS4 engineer, $25,000. Commissioner?
Yes, and Nick Erickson, our civil engineer, is handing out some information on this. This account was cut quite a bit before the budget was finalized last June, and basically we're trying to get back to where we started. Nick is our in-house expert on stormwater, and in fact he's a member of the steering committee of the Central Mass Regional Stormwater Commission, if that's the right
coalition.
Close.
Yeah, close. So basically what we're asking for here is an appropriation of the money that was cut from the original stormwater budget proposal earlier this year. So the handout that I just passed out includes a breakdown of how each of these 3 appropriations would be spent. Of course, everything's an estimate. Any leftover money that we would have in any of these budgets, I'd like to note, would go towards stormwater repairs, so essentially streets repairs, improving flooding areas, fixing erosion issues, fixing washed out pavement, rebuilding catch basins, that type of stuff.
So, gentlemen, you stated that it was cut. my recollection was it wasn't necessarily removed. Wasn't not removed because there's litigation going on at the federal level that put this kind of on hold for the time being when the budget was first situated. I know it was put in initially and then taken out, but when we say cut, I don't want it to make it sound like that we needed it then and we just got rid of it. I recall there was a concerted effort to not put it in because we weren't sure at the time if we were really going to have to do it this year because of that litigation. Is that not a more accurate description of what took place?
Yeah, when the budget was being written last spring, there was still some doubt as to whether the stormwater permit would be finally in effect on July 1st, because the previous year we went through the same thing, and then the day before it was supposed to take effect, it was, due to a court case, it was postponed. This year, they did implement the permit on July 1st, so we've had enough to make it through this far, but
Who was they? EPA or DEP or both?
EPA.
EPA?
Yep, it's a federal stormwater permit through the EPA. So there was a court case that held that up, but it's been since somewhat resolved. There's no official word on the ruling of the case, but we've had some inside information from the Stormwater Coalition, and it sounds like they're going to continue. No questions asked, no changes to the permit as implemented, and it became effective July 1st, 2018.
Is this part of the Clean Water Act? Is that?
It is, yep.
Okay.
So this is the same permit that I've come in and talked about before, and we've discussed. So it's finally in effect. It's a 10-year permit. So in 2028, they're going to be looking to issue another permit. But based on the EPA's history, they dragged out the last permit for I think 16 years with an original permit term of 10 years. So it could be another 16 years before we see another permit.
So the 10-year permit, would that indicate then that this 400,000 is going to be the norm every single year for the 10 years?
Correct.
And would this be correctly classified as another federal unfunded mandate?
Yes.
Okay, so we've had a lot of those in this city. I recently read an article in the Telegram about Shirley and some Shrewsbury. I know there are cities and towns in this Commonwealth that are getting hit with this permit, and many of them are deciding how they're going to pay for this.
Right.
I know for this first year, we're using available funds. I know there are other communities that are seriously looking into creating what is called a Stormwater Enterprise Fund.
Essentially, yeah.
And would that enterprise fund not equate to requiring the residents to pay a fee?
It would if we decided to pursue that as a funding option.
So that hasn't been determined yet, obviously, from the mayor's office and
Correct.
consultation. But I just want to throw that out there to possibly lessen the blow. I don't know what's going to happen, but I will say from where I sit, not going to be looked on favorably by me, considering our residents are paying through the roof on sewer rates because of the ingenious attitudes of the EPA, thinking that our residents are just floating in cash. But they're sitting comfortably in their air-conditioned offices in D.C. Or maybe not because of the federal shutdown. But so this will cover the compliance of that permit. Do they, EPA, whomever, do they track what we're doing with this 400,000? Do they provide an update as to whether we're in compliance?
Yes.
Is that a yearly review
So
they do?
yearly, we have to report towards the end of the permit year. So in June, we'll be submitting reports. And those detail compliance with each of the year one requirements. So there's a set of, very finite requirements with measurable goals. If we don't meet those goals, then we're opening ourselves up to potential fines from the EPA.
Of course, because that's what the EPA likes to do. Councilor Boschman,
She had her hand up first.
you're on the committee. You can go first.
All right. I just want to rectify something here. I was sitting right across from where Sam Squire, Council Squire is saying, 3 years ago, approximately 3 years ago, we appropriated $400,000, and that was put into the budget. And I argued tooth and nail that I said, I'll vote for this with the understanding that we would have a program in place of who's going to pay and who's not going to pay. I made that very, very clear. And then all of a sudden, EPA dragged their foot, but we still had the $400,000 in the budget. Because last year I came and bugged you, because I wanted to cut $400,000 out of the budget, but I didn't put it in time, at the budget time, because I screwed up.
Right.
Now, I'd like to know where that $400,000 went, because if I recall right, Lenny said you guys were joining a pool, of different communities, so you can share information, and you can borrow that engineer to come over here, and vice versa, of what we were doing.
Yep.
What did we do with the 400,000 that we appropriated 3 years ago?
You want to answer that?
Yeah, it was for last fiscal year. We purchased the vac truck. We did drainage work in Ward 2 on Kimball Street.
And then,
Those are the main expenditures.
right, and to answer your question, we did join the Central Mass Regional Stormwater Coalition. I'm actually on the steering committee. That costs $4,000 for membership per year, so we've signed up for a second year. And as part of that, we're getting a lot of templates and reporting information that's going to help us come May when we start assembling the final report to the EPA. So we're definitely getting our money's worth out of that
Okay.
$4,000 investment.
On this MS4, you're dealing with catch basins, and the way you explained it, and Lenny and you, we're gonna go around twice a year cleaning the streets, in the spring and in the fall because of the leaves.
Mhm.
Are you guys, on this MS4 program, are you guys gonna be responsible for the catch basins? Because our catch basins are just like the sidewalks, are deplorable.
So as part of this MS4 permit, all of our stormwater infrastructure is encompassed under the permit. So that includes catch basins, manholes, the outfall pipes to the streams and rivers in the city. So yes, we are keeping an eye on those. In this $400,000 appropriation here is a target goal of $100,000 for a contractor to come in and just rebuild basins. So
$100,000 for what?
just to rebuild catch basins and do that type of work. So that's system maintenance that should happen on an annual basis. Usually it doesn't happen because we don't have guys, we don't have money, and we can't do the work without guys or money. And we don't have money for contractors to come do the work for us. So this is a concerted effort, in my opinion, a step in the right direction towards actually maintaining the infrastructure that we own so that we don't end up in a hole that we can't get out of.
So, my question to you, on the catch basin, are we planning to subcontract that out, or are we planning on hire in-house?
I think we can do a little bit of both. Usually we have a crew that rebuilds catch basins on a semi-frequent basis during the summer. In this additional budget request here is money for our guys to do more work, to hire temporary labor so that we're doing this work in-house, and to hire a contractor to also do some of that work. So we're kind of splitting it between us and a contractor to get more done, basically.
Well, I'm going to say this very clear. I'm in favor of keeping the work in-house, very much in favor of keeping the work in-house. But if we're doing anything like we're doing with the street potholes, then we're doing a heck of a job. We're not doing a good job. We don't have the manpower. We don't have the manpower. And that's why I asked you, we're going to appropriate $100,000, then we can hire two more employees.
Well, that's in here right now. So if you look under the key assumptions here, the second paragraph down, DPW admin, personal services, MS4 temp labor, there's $50,000 in there to hire 2 to 3 temporary employees, 40 hours a week times 20 weeks. So the goal is to have those people in-house to be doing this work. And then we have money for supplies, and then we also have money to hire a contractor to help us get further along in a single year. I don't know that we can support more than 2 to 3 temporary employees. If we were able to hire, a few more full-time employees, we can certainly add a catch basin crew to the DPW staff. But that's pending funding that's not necessarily included in this $400,000 appropriation. I think that's talks for next budget season.
So, if I don't vote for this tonight, then I can get in trouble with the EPA or DEP, whatever you want to call it.
Potentially.
So if I say tonight, right here at this table, and next Tuesday night, I'll vote for this if we have a plan. If we have a plan, it becomes an enterprise fund that we have, that everybody's paying. I have no problem with it. But when you tell me a select few are going to pay for it, then I have a big problem with it. Because what I have a problem with, we're always going after the same people to pay. But we don't go after different other people that get the same benefits as we do. It's like we're being punished because we own a house. And that's not the way it should be. Everybody should be paying. and I'll in favor of it, because I believe in Clean Water Act, and I believe in the clean rivers and that. But I want to make sure everybody pays, and I like to have a plan before the next year that we show that we do it. Whether we want to call it a tax or not, we have to do it. No matter how we look at it, we're going to have to do it, because everybody wants clean water. We all want it. As much as we hate to say it, but we like it when we look at the Nashua River and say, ooh, is it pretty? And that. So I like to see it, but I'll vote for it. If you guarantee me this time, you have a plan. If you're going to come back and say, we're not going to, I can't guarantee you that, then I can't vote for this.
So
Because I gave you $400,000 already.
included in this is hiring a consultant to study funding options. Typically, when a town goes ahead and identifies a funding source, creates an enterprise fund, consultant comes in, studies the issue, they come up with a targeted net revenue essentially, and then work backwards from there as to how to accurately, fairly, evenly distribute that cost among whatever target group of people there is. So one of the goals is to hire a consultant to figure out the best fit for Fitchburg essentially in funding. The answer might be just to keep it in the DPW budget as a line item, but I'd like to have a consultant come in and talk about that, and I can't, or identify that. I can't do that without some of this money. So it's kind of a catch-22 that we're in.
All right, okay, thank you.
What astounds me, Counsel, with your comment is you're usually the first person to ring the alarm bell that people are paying too much, and here you are advocating for a new tax. When I criticize the EPA, some people, wrongly of course, will say I don't care about clean water. My problem is the aloof eggheads in D.C. don't give a damn about our city. They don't care. We have a median household income of $48,000. We have a lot of people in the city who are not wealthy. So an extra $20 or $30 a month is a lot of money for them, especially since they've been getting kicked in the face on the sewer separation. I will say here right now, if the option is a stormwater enterprise fund, I'm a no vote. I ain't taking it anymore from these guys, all right? Especially when we don't know yet what our marijuana retail licensures and cultivation facilities are going to bring in for revenue on an annual basis. The comment about everybody should pay is a generic comment. Everybody is paying because this is a free cash appropriation. This is money left over from the prior fiscal year that can be used for any purpose. So technically, everybody is paying for it. I mean, whether you are a renter or an owner, if you're a renter, the landlord will pass the cost down to the renter. And if you're an owner, you're paying the property tax. So everybody is paying equitably for this. It's just, with regards to a plan, Eric, do you have any idea where geographically in the city for that $100,000 and for the temporary work, for the catch basins you can do this year? You guys have a targeted area you're going to attack first, or is it just going to be spread out all over the place?
Right now, the goal is to prioritize main roads. I can't give you that right now. We haven't thought that far down the road. I will say that $100,000 doesn't get us very far.
Right.
It might handle a street or two if there's a lot of catch basins that need a lot of work. It might handle, 50 to 60 catch basins throughout the city.
So at the end of the fiscal year, when these geniuses review what we've done, what's the benchmark? I mean, if we can only do 7 or 8, and they come and say you should do 38, I mean, do they have like a benchmark of what we have to do every year?
So what they've done is they've asked us to submit what they call a notice of intent. So we basically come up with our plan that outlines how we're going to meet their requirements.
Okay.
And we were required to submit that back in October. So we came up with a plan, and it broke down every item in the stormwater permit, essentially, and identified how we would comply with that. One of those requirements is performing regular system maintenance. Now, when I went through and wrote the NOI, I tried to keep it as vague as possible so we wouldn't get nailed down to something specific. But system maintenance includes X number of miles of culvert cleaning, X number of basins being rebuilt. I don't recall the number that I put in off the top of my head, but it's something around 100 basins a year was my target goal.
And these temporary employees, I mean, are we going to have a long time getting these guys on? Or, because I know sometimes it involves difficulty in finding the right help. So, I mean, if this is approved tonight and finalized next week by full council, are recs going to go out immediately for these temporary workers?
I'd say within a week or two, yeah.
Okay. So I just hope that there is a market out there for these jobs where we can find people immediately. Because my concern is you guys will have wrecks out there for months and have a difficult time finding somebody.
Right, and that's
Which would-
something that I'm not sure if I can't really speak to what the
Yeah,
job market is.
no, yeah,
like
that's
now.
not really, it's just a concern I have, because I know in the past there's been issues with water personnel, finding the right personnel and waste, so, it's because it's a very specialized field, and not just everybody can do this, so, that's the
The
only,
benefit with stormwater work is that unlike water, there's not really permit, licenses required.
Okay.
When you're working with water, it's high pressure, so you have to have certain licenses, distribution licenses, treatment licenses, so.
Counselor Walsh?
I just had a question as to what is your estimated timeline? If, once this appropriation is made, what are you looking at for, like, some noticeable change in, catch basins and all of what's involved here?
Well, I mean, a lot of the work requires some administrative stuff up front, so we need to submit requests for proposals for engineering services to meet those permit requirements. We need to advertise for those temporary help positions. We need to get people on board. We'll need to train them, and we'll actually need to do the construction work. For the $100,000, we'll need to put out a bid for that work and hire a contractor on board. So it's kind of a tough situation for us not having this money back in, the beginning of the fiscal year. We're halfway through already. We have to report on a lot of this stuff. Basically, starting in May, we start assembling our report, and then we get it out the door. I think it's due in June, so we're going to get as much done as we can before then. And then the remainder, I would say we try to encumber the funds just to pay for whatever contracts and services that we line up between now and then.
So a lot of this really isn't in your hands. It depends on what the response is when you put out a proposal and.
Correct.
Okay,
Yeah,
thank
we
you.
have 3 on-call engineering firms that we have contracts with right now. So that makes it a little bit quicker, just because we can, have each of them develop a scope for us, and the turnaround's a lot quicker. But we still have to give them, a reasonable amount of time to put together proposals, then execute everything with purchasing. So there's a little bit of a lag time.
Thank you.
Counsel Squally?
When it comes to actual things that residents are going to see, are we generally cleaning most catch basins? Or when you say rebuilding, is it just generally the sunken-in ones? Or are the ones that we have not up to current compliance? What are the residents actually going to see in this first year?
So the catch basins, under the permit, aren't allowed to be more than 50% full at any given time. So a big
All
chunk.
catch basins.
All catch basins in the city, which in a city like Fitchburg is extremely difficult. Because we have a lot of hills, we use a lot of sand in the winter, so the catch basins fill up basically after every rainstorm. So just keeping up with that, with the employees that we have and the budget that we have is very difficult. So a lot of this will be going towards that, sweeping the streets in the winter, which we already do anyways. The most visible things will be fixing those like sunken-in catch basins. So the ones that you hit with your car and pop your tire on. Hopefully, those are the ones that get fixed first if we're able to get this money. It's going to involve some help from our engineering staff. Driving around and trying to help prioritize and identify these areas that need to be fixed. But I'd say that's probably the most visible thing that you're going to see. A lot of stormwater infrastructure is underground. You don't really see it unless there's a problem. So if there's a problem, you're going to see flooding or, sunken-in basins, manholes, all that stuff.
When it comes to the fall schedule for street sweeping, is there going to be a schedule like we have in the spring? Or that's announced so that that we can move our cars and?
Yeah, that's another difficult one to comply with. I mean, this year we had a good-sized snowstorm in November, and that pretty much ended the street sweeping for the year before we had a chance to pick up the leaves. I mean, that's the goal, is to pick up the leaves so that so they don't decay and put phosphorus into the National River, which is, the EPA's goal is to reduce the phosphorus in the river. But, once we get into it and find out what we can do and what we can do in a practical time frame, we'll try to issue a schedule. But as opposed to cleaning up sand like we do in the spring, this is basically to pick up leaves.
And when it comes for the residents to know what we're doing, is there like an educational outreach program for residents that doesn't include only the street sweeping and the leaves? Is there something else that residents should know about what we're doing here?
So the permit itself has a public education outreach component. So that's something that we're going to be working on over the next 6 months or so. We have a website set up right now where residents can go for information.
Like not dumping chemicals down the drain or
Yep,
not
some
using
information
lawn
like
chemicals
that.
or?
We also post up, or we're going to start posting up all our reporting documents to the EPA. So if you go on there right now, you'll see a map of our stormwater system. You'll be able to see the NOI that we submitted to EPA, a few things like that.
Where is this? I'm sorry.
The city's website, so Fitchburg.
On our stormwater management?
I forget exactly how to get there, but I think it's you go under Public Works and then Streets and then Stormwater.
Okay, thank you.
One thing clear. If I was you two guys, I'd be in the mayor's office tomorrow morning, 8 o'clock in the morning, pounding the desk and say, we don't want temporary help. We need permanent full-time help. I'm telling you right now, go with the permanent full-time and fight for that. Temporary help is not the way to go. And you can use them in the DPW. Why would you want to blow an opportunity where you can get permanent help if you fight for it hard enough? I mean, I get a temporary job. You don't put your back and soul into it because you have no, what's the word I want? Loyalty. You got no loyalty because you don't care what kind of work you do.
Counselor, can we keep this relevant to the MS4?
I asked MS4.
You're getting it into personnel matters. You just said it just now. It's a discussion between the department head and the mayor.
right.
We have no say in this.
Well, that's the way I would go. So I'll be paying very close attention to it. So let me know how you make out because my vote's going to count.
I'm all set with temporary help. I'm all set with contractors. I'm all set if you did all contractors. And why? Because we have a $350 million unfunded liability. That's why we don't hire bodies left and right, unless you want to further bankrupt the city in 15 years. Hire all contractors for all I care. I just want the work done. And that's the cheaper option, because we can't even afford to pay what we've promised already. That's why we're not hiring 10 or 15 DPW workers. It's not because the mayor's sitting on a boatload of cash and he says, you know what, I'm going to go stash it. It's because he doesn't want to exacerbate. I won't speak for him, but this is what the previous mayor did too. The 285, I said 350, it's 285. 80% of everybody's tax increase this year. They got their bills on, what was it, in January, a couple weeks ago? 85% of their increase is going to the unfunded pension and health insurance liability. Not going to added services, and that'll be the norm for 20 years. So when they call and they yell at me about their tax increase, I'm going to go, we have a liability we got to pay. And as a former temporary employee of the city of Fitchburg, when I used to work for the cemetery department, I take issue with the comment that temporary workers don't care about what they're doing or they don't really care as much as full-time. I was a temporary worker for 3 summers, and I cared a hell of a lot. Most of these temporary workers we hire, in my estimation, in my experience, are Fitchburg people. So let's not get nonsensical here, okay? Just get what you need to get done to get the work done, and preferably not hire full-time bodies right now through this stream, because my question right now is, this $400,000, could this be potentially more next year?
$1 million.
I think it's going to be steadily at $400,000, but it all depends on how the EPA responds to our efforts this first year.
So the EPA can come on high down from their perch and say to us, we're not doing enough, you need to spend more money.
Potentially.
I'm telling you, I'm in the wrong profession. Okay, well, wonderful for them. And I get so upset about this because if anybody tells me that the feds can't afford this, they blow $250 billion a year, according to the Government Accountability Office. They can afford to give Fitchburg $400,000 for their saving the universe proposals that they throw at us with no funding for it, you know? I cannot stand it, because you know what's going to happen, everybody? If we do an enterprise fund or a stormwater, who do you think's going to get the calls? We are. We're going to get the crap. Not those jerks in D.C. We're going to get it. We're still getting it on sewer separation. So it just ticks me off, because these people who make these decisions, who are supposedly looking out for us, they don't give a damn about our residents because our residents can't afford it as it is. And now we're going to tag them with it. I guarantee you the consultant's going to come back and say, you need an enterprise fund. Because again, the consultant's not paying for it. What does he or she care? That's going to be the solution, and I'm not going to go with it because I'm sick and tired, as you have said, Counselor, many times, of paying more and more. Our people pay a lot. Well, you know, maybe we should contact, I try to tell people this all the time, contact your federal legislature, your Congresswoman Trahan, and the illustrious Senators Markey and Warren who look out for the little guy, and tell them this is hurting us. It doesn't work with the sewer separation project, so why not tack on another fee for our residents? Well, I'm just saying, I'm going off on a tangent because it frustrates me to no end. These guys are tasked with doing something, and they got a gun to their head from the EPA, because if we don't do it, they're going to hit us with fines. So I just want the work done right. And my rant right now has been made clear for years because I know we're going to get the crap thrown at us if that happens. Like we did it. We didn't do anything. We're following our masters in D.C. who know more than we do. Air quotes. So hopefully this stays flat unless our overlords tell us to spend more money. So I will support this because, like the sewer separation, we have no choice. We have no choice. We can debate how to get there, but we have to spend the money, whether it's full-time or part-time and contract. We just have to satisfy our masters. So, Councilor Zarella.
Motion to approve 1519.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 1519. Speaking on the motion,
Speaking on the motion, we passed $400,000 3 years ago. We spent approximately $280,000 on the DAC truck for the catch basins. I'd like to know why we're spending for personal services on the temp labor up here, and the other thing, $25,000 on when we were supposed to already hire them back then with the $400,000.
Point of information?
Yes.
We heard what that $400,000 was spent on. That was equipment and materials and whatnot.
No, he bought one truck with it, Councilor. One truck that cost
Councilor,
$280,000.
through the chair, please. Okay. Councilor Zarella, go ahead.
It was one truck and something else. I forget exactly what. But this
on Kimball Street was the
right. Thank you.
Of it.
So drainage work and a truck. This time around, this money is for an expert consultant to determine how we comply with this onerous mandate from DC. Because that's not the kind of thing where you can just glance at it and say, here's what we need to do. If you just take a flyer on it and we're wrong, then that's when we get the escalating costs because the EPA comes back and says your plan isn't good enough. And fortunately for people who do this kind of work, unfortunately for us, that kind of expert consultancy costs because these people live this stuff day in and day out, and there's no way we find anyone, just around who's going to have that level of 24/7 live, sleep, and breathe EPA mandates. So that's what it's costing.
So what's equally frustrating for me right now is if I had my say, it would be we would set up an enterprise fund, but $400,000 of the marijuana revenue would go to that. And I focus on the marijuana because that's a new industry where we haven't collected a dime on yet in our budgets. We didn't budget any revenue in 19. We're not budgeting any revenue in 2020. Now, when residents hear about the marijuana revenues that are going to come in, their first two reactions are schools and roads. They're not going to be happy that we're going to possibly earmark $400,000 of that revenue to this, which does maintain roads, but they're talking paving. And they're going to lose it if they hear that some of that money's got to be diverted to this. But my counter to them would be, would you rather pay more on your bill? And I guarantee you they'll be okay with it. But that, to me, is the only avenue. If they're going to go with a stormwater enterprise fund, then it needs to be fully 100% funded through the marijuana revenues that we have not collected or realized yet. That, to me, is the only way to do this. Because for me anyway, I'm not having the people pay more, and I guarantee you if you gave them a choice between paying more or having the marijuana revenues go towards it, they'd pick option B every time. But then they'll say, well, why aren't the roads getting paved or the schools getting funded with this extra money? Because, again, contact your federal legislature. I don't know what to tell you. But I'm always thinking ahead because I know what's going to happen here. You can write the script on this one. So a motion has been made and seconded to approve 15-19. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll move now to two items for the schools, starting with 01019. Order that there be and hereby is appropriated the sum of $150,000 to be charged against available funds and credited to School Department Longeau roof replacement. And I have a letter here from the mayor to Auditor Brooks. Kindly draw a council order for the city of Fitchburg to appropriate the sum of $150,000 from available funds and credited to capital projects Longeau School roof replacement. Currently, funds are in place to complete the replacement of the roof and gutter system. The work is currently on hold until spring weather arrives. When work began on the roof, the asbestos pipe insulation in the attic was abated to avoid the possibility of contamination of the building by the roof work being done. The pipes now have to be re-insulated. The sprinkler heads in the attic were found to be original to the building and should have been replaced long ago. The estimated cost for this work is $150,000. Is it superintendent or still acting superintendent?
Technically, still acting.
Technically, I'll call it Superintendent Jokola.
Thank you.
Would you like to add anything to that letter?
I can't expand any more on that letter. This $150,000 in addition to the funds previously approved should help wrap up the Longster Roof project, which will reconvene or re-begin after the winter weather ends.
And this is new scope that was found when the roof was being...
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How old is that building again?
It's 1936,
So almost 80 years old? And the sprinkler heads are original to the building?
what I understand, yes.
Okay. Councilor Zarella.
I just wanted to confirm because the agenda and the letter don't match in terms of the account that we're crediting this to. I just want to make sure that for technical purposes, we're doing this, accurately if we need to amend.
The order I have in my hand and the agenda item are going to the same place. Longeau School Roof Replacement Project.
Okay, no, that's fine. It's just the letter that you read.
The letter?
Didn't say the same.
Capital project, but that's
It's the same place, Longeau School Roof Replacement, just
Okay.
capital line item.
Just making sure.
Okay. Council Boschman.
Mr. Superintendent, there's not gonna be any more hidden costs now, right? This ought to do it, this ought to pay over $2 million for that roof, right? No more hidden costs, they're coming up with surprises?
These are all the costs that we are aware of. We have very small cushions, so myself, the city auditor, the building commissioner, have vetted these latest numbers a few times, so unless something happens with the winter weather, I think we should be all set.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President.
Motion to approve?
No, Chairman.
Do we have a second? Second. Motion made and seconded to approve 10-19. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Next, I will take up item numbers 17-19, that there being hereby is appropriated the sum of $200,000 to be charged against available funds and credited to school department capital improvements for the purpose of replacing the water pipe at South Street Elementary School West Building, 2 FHS, that's $72,000, 2 Fitchburg High School water pressure tanks for $14,000, and door replacements at Longeau Middle School and Cracker Elementary School for $114,000. And the letter from Superintendent Jokola to the mayor basically states the same thing of what the $200,000 will do. He adds that the above risk management investments are necessary at this time to preserve the buildings for continued operations. The door cost estimate is still in the process of being finalized. We will share any cost estimate changes with you as that information becomes available. My question on this, Superintendent, and maybe for the auditor too, but you would know this. The 150 we just approved, plus the 200 if we approve it tonight, does that all go towards net school spending?
I can't answer the question with certainty. That would be from a
The 150 would not, because that's a capital.
Capital, yeah.
$2 million project.
But then
but the 200?
the 200 could, they're individual line items,
Under
separate
150.
projects, yeah.
Yep.
Okay, I'm just curious, because, it would boost our,
Yes.
above our MSS, so,
Yeah.
So these are just basic replacements?
They're,
capital
well,
replacements.
I'd say they're more than basic, I
Not
would say. They're very high priority, and I guess I use the term risk management lightly in terms of in the basement. There were brass pipes that, again, are 1940-something pipes that needed to be replaced to prevent anything from happening. So those have been, that job has been completed. The pressure tanks will help preserve, heating systems up at Fitchburg High, and the doors, we can't, file the fine workings of the door locks anymore. They need replacement to provide safe locking.
I love these appropriations because it fuels it upsets the narrative that we don't invest in our school buildings, which is ridiculous, but some people hold that opinion because they don't know what they're talking about. So I really like to emphasize tonight that we are about to appropriate $350,000, what we don't have to the school department for capital needs throughout our school buildings. May not sound like a lot of money, but these little items add up to a lot over time, and they could present even bigger costs to the city if we don't address them now. So just for the crowd that says we don't care about our schools and we don't put any money towards them, just like to, press that wound a little bit, because it's ridiculous. Councilor Boschman.
Yeah, I just want to say, I don't give him credit, but I will say it this time, the mayor, we've been spending a lot of money since I've been on this council, I'm just saying it. But my question to you guys, we're a $60 million budget. How much of that budget goes to maintenance, you set aside for your school maintenance? On a $60 million budget.
Well, the capital portion of the budget is very small. It's only maybe $150,000, $200,000.
That's it?
That's it.
Boy, don't go too far with that, huh?
We have contractual obligations and...
Well, do you think we get too many chiefs and not enough Indians?
Counselor,
Oh.
budgetary question for a later
Sorry.
date.
But anyway, I just wanted to point out, I was going to say that, but Mr. Chair took the thing. Since I've been on here, we've been spending a lot of money on capital improvements. I think we have been, 2-point-something, we're over $3 million. Really, if you consider the roof, but there's a different name for capital improvements, but it's all the same. It all goes to the school. It's a lot of money.
I want to say it's close to 7 or 8 million in the last
Yeah.
3 years.
I will give you credit on that.
Memorial Auditorium, completely new. You can go down the list. We've done this, but the list is endless. So we're attacking it where we can, given our constraints.
Okay.
So
Now, my question to you, we had a big freeze the other day. I mean, it was cold because my pipes broke. No problems in the school, right?
No.
Okay.
We've taken
Nothing-
precautionary measures, and we're doing walkthroughs of all the buildings.
In my ward, Rango, the best school in town, it's okay, Rango?
As far as I know.
No? Okay. All right, thank you.
Councilor Zarella.
I'd just like to re-emphasize one of the points that the chairman made, that these costs that we're appropriating right now, we're essentially getting them cheap, because if we wait, this has been kind of the theme of the first year of my time on the council, is if we wait, if we kick the can down the road, then we have to play catch up at 2, 3, 5, 10 times the cost when something fails. So I'm happy to see us getting out ahead of these things before there are problems. And I'd like to Move to approve 1719.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 1719. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you.
We're really jumping around, aren't we?
Yeah, I'm hopscotching. Yep. Okay, let us now take up 16-18, last page. Order that there be and hereby is appropriated the sum of $33,197 to be charged against available funds and credited to law, other expenses, damages, persons, and properties, $20,297, and law, other expenses, registry, and other fees, $12,900. I have a letter here from Solicitor Pusateri to the mayor on January 7th. Dear Mayor, kindly be advised that I am requesting an appropriation to the Law Department for payment of certain expenses associated with completion of the Fitchburg Airport Corrective Action Plan, code enforcement litigation, and payment of the city's insurance deductibles. Please instruct the auditor to draft an order for $33,197 from free cash for these purposes, outlined more specifically below. Number one, the sum of $12,900 to be added to legal, registry, and other fees in payment of $4,400 to Howard S. Dono and Associates for 2 real property appraisals necessary to complete documentation required by the Federal Aeronautical Administration as part of the Fitchburg Airport Corrective Action Plan, $4,500 to Gale Associates to perform additional engineering work to produce an updated airport layout plan in Exhibit A required by the Federal Aeronautical Administration as part of the Fitchburg Airport Corrective Action Plan, and $3,000 for service of process and title examination expenses for code enforcement actions brought on behalf of the building, health, and fire departments. The sum of $20,297 to be added to legal, damages, person, property as payment of deductibles incurred by the city with its insurer, MIIA, for claims made against the city. We have Solicitor Pusateri and Assistant Solicitor Tree here. Would you like to add anything, folks?
I'd like to take away something, actually. The $20,000 to the Maya, we worked with Maya yesterday on the phone, and we were able to apply a participation credit that Maya has issued the city to offset those deductible costs. So that $20,000 item for the deductibles, $20,296.50 item for the deductibles, I don't need any cash to pay those items.
To deduct that item from the appropriation?
So a motion has been made and seconded to remove the $20,297 line item of this request, leaving just $12,900 to be appropriated for the necessary airport corrective action plan items and the examinations expenses for code enforcement actions. So instead of $33,197, the new number will be $12,900. Do I have a second on that motion?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to amend 1619 to be a total of $12,900. All those in favor of the amendment?
Aye.
All those opposed? It is amended as before you.
Motion to approve as amended?
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve as amended. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you, folks.
Thank you. I just wanted to add, just briefly, that the participation credit has been something that the mayor's office, Auditor Brooks, and Susan Davis, of Human Resources Office, have been working on. And the payment of those deductibles was a pretty big deal for our department's budget, so we appreciated that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, Christine.
Thank you, Councillor Boschman.
Okay. Okay, we'll next go to the airport number, 00919. In order that there be and hereby is appropriated the sum of $102,000 to be charged against available funds and credited to airport revenue for the purpose of reducing the airport deficit fund balance. And a letter from, we have a letter here from Scott Ellis, manager of the airport, who is before us, dated January 16th, To the mayor, as you know, the airport operates under airport receipts reserved for appropriation to its budget. A balanced budget is approved by the city council, and at the end of the fiscal year, the surplus or deficit is added to the airport fund balance. The airport has managed to maintain a balanced budget until the last couple of years. As you also know, the airport is in the middle of a multi-tiered capital improvement project that includes the new administration building, an improved sewer system, an extended runway, new instrument approaches to the runway, and a self-serve fueling system. Once these projects are complete, increased corporate and general aviation traffic, as well as an increase in development-ready open space, will lead to return to profitability. In the meantime, I believe there will be an ongoing deficit in the operating budget of the airport for at least the next 2 fiscal years, 2019 and 2020. Therefore, I'm asking for an appropriation from available funds in the amount of $102,000 to reduce the fund deficit. This appropriation will help avoid a bigger deficit at the end of this year. Questions? Councilor Boschman.
My question to you is the 102,000, is that the 50,000 you usually give to the city and then the 50,000 for the terminal that you guys had built?
No, that is separate. The $50,000,
What?
the $50,000 that we give to the city for operating expenses is a totally different line item. This is at the advice of the auditor to make up a shortfall due to what we said in the letter, the ongoing capital improvement projects.
You know, numerous times I fought against you guys about the airport, and I keep on saying that why should taxpayers of Fitchburg pay? And it should be a regional thing where regional people pay, because you kept on coming back, you came back and you said, we received $14.6 million in revenue from the airport alone, according to the article and according to the information you've given us.
Council, that's not revenue, that's economic activity. in the
Okay,
region.
sorry about the way I presented it. But those numbers are wrong. We never had 129 employees, city employees down on the airport. Now, the other thing I want to ask you is, we're going gun-ho on the runway at a cost of probably $12 million plus, right? Am I right or wrong?
No, the worst case is 5% of 12 million,
It'll be 600,000.
roughly.
Well, it's going to cost the whole total job, it'd be 12 million, right? Do you ever hear of R4102?
Yes.
What's that, R41?
That's a restricted area over the south post at Fort Devens, over the firing ranges. 4102 A and B is starts at the surface and goes up to I want to say probably 12,000 feet. And it's a restricted area that aircraft can't fly through if the area is active, if they're doing shooting activity at Fort Devens.
Is it shooting? I thought it was for MIT and
Councilor, what does this have to do with the appropriation request?
Well, this has a lot to do with the appropriation, Mr. President, because they're coming in front of us for money here,
Can you
and they
get to
want
the
me to
point
pay
then,
for it all
please,
based on
Counselor?
it.
Can you get to the point then, please, Council? We're talking about Fort Devens here. What, can you get to your point?
Because he's talking about one of your aircraft coming down the runway.
Okay, well, stick with that then.
Well,
Please.
the R4102 interferes with that, doesn't it, sir?
It does at the moment.
It does at the moment.
Yeah.
So there's a good possibility a linear jet coming in to make a landing approaching on Route 31 or 14 won't be able to do it.
No, that's not true. The reconfiguration of the runway, lengthening of the runway is going to be canted 1.5 degrees, and the new approach is going to clear 4102 A and B entirely. It's not going to be an issue.
It's not going to be an issue.
Nope.
That's what you're saying now, right?
Yes, sir.
All right. I'm not.
I point out that restricted area has been there since World War II.
I thought it was because of MIT and the,
It has nothing to do with MIT.
with the domes up to 2,500 feet.
Nope. Has nothing to do with MIT.
All right.
So, okay, go on.
Motion to approve 0919.
Second.
And speaking on the motion,
Motion made and seconded to approve 00919. Speaking on the motion, Councilor Zarella.
I would just like to point out that there was a presentation made last month, I want to say, by the airport that I believe all of us were present at, actually, where it was explained that keeping the airport operational is not really optional for us. We can't force anyone else to take it over. That's just not an option. We can't force someone to take an airport. And if we renege on our grant obligations, then we're on the hook. So this, we've seen a good plan going forward that's going to get the airport to a fully balanced budget within the next few years, so that we won't have to keep kicking this in. This is not a perpetual cost that's going to be laid on the city. All we need to do is help them to stay solvent until then.
So, Councilor Zarello is correct. I look at this like a restaurant. If businesses that have to make mass renovations or mass improvements have to close shop for several weeks, if not months, and they take a hit on their bottom line while those improvements are being made, because those improvements will pay themselves back and some once they're finished. That's the case here. Now, the history of the airport management before Mr. Ellis's time, I'm well aware of, not run very well. That were problems before 2017 and 16 and even well beyond that. But in this case, you have an airport that's having mass renovations and mass improvements paid almost entirely by the state and federal governments to expand the runway, the administrative, he listed it all in the letter. That impacts revenue generation while those improvements are going on. So I don't have a problem subsidizing the airport to keep them on their feet while these improvements are going forward. Where I will have a problem is once the improvements are finished, and the next year, the year after that, once they're finished, they're coming back to us for money. Then I'm going to have a problem, because it's being sold to us, and it makes logical sense that they're not making enough money because everything is going on down there, preventing them from doing it, but they'll make it all back once it's finished. Okay, great. When this is finished, if we're still getting $100,000, hell, if we get a $10,000 appropriation, I'm not going to be happy. So for right now, they need to stay afloat while these improvements go on. Once the improvements are finished, and if they're still in a deficit, then that's going to have to be a whole other discussion of what's going on down there. But for right now, to me, the description and the explanations are adequate, and they make sense. So we have to wait until that time and then assess how they're going to perform after those improvements. And if it's still not making money, then we have a different discussion. So that's my feeling on this. Mr. Ellis, did you want to say something?
Yes. To go along with your point, the FAA likes to give money away, and then they have, you have to promise to do certain things in order to get it, just like at any other government agency. One of the things that they like to do, they give basically every airport in the country, it's called a Non-Discretionary Fund, and it's roughly $150,000 a year. This is, hey, you don't have any big projects, here's $150,000 for all your little projects. And the snow removal equipment, the piece of equipment that I bought last year that I had to borrow $26,000 for, that would have been for that. The problem is when you have a large project like what we're doing right now, that $150,000 gift gets absorbed into the larger project. So the day that these projects started, my budget took a $150,000 hit.
Do you happen to know when, thank you for that, do you happen to have an estimate of when everything's going to be finished?
Right now, we're looking at estimated, and I always say estimate because it always seems like there's going to be a delay. It's the government. Mm-hmm. We're looking at breaking ground for the runway project and having it completed sometime in 2020.
Okay.
There's a possibility if we qualify under a different funding source that we may be able to start that sooner. And that other funding source is actually 100% funded, and it's not going to cost the city anything. So worst case is the runway is going to cost the city 5%. Best case is it's going to cost the city nothing. I haven't had that much communication with the FAA because it's a federal agency and they're kind of, some of them are not at work right now. I haven't had much contact with them in the last month or so, except for absolute necessity.
So is that the last major project left? I mean, I know you listed some other things, but is that the real big item that's
the
holding
big
up
item.
a lot of stuff?
That's the big item. That runway project is going to allow us to, it's going to extend the runway. So that's going to increase the jet traffic. It's going to get us away so 4102A and B is no longer a concern. We're also closing our crosswind runway, which is going to increase the developable land on the airport. It's going to double the amount of acreage we have for further development.
Of a commercial building? or
Commercial
something? Yeah, okay.
buildings, we talked about the solar farms, expanding the industrial park that's next to Crawford Street. So the key is that runway. That runway is going to allow us to engage in several new revenue generating.
So this 102,000, Mr. Brooks, this is to cover 18?
Yes.
So we're going to get another one of these to cover 19, and probably another one to cover 20.
Well, I believe this one is for FY19. We're in FY19 right now.
Right, but it's covering the deficit
Yeah.
that you incurred in FY18.
Oh,
So
okay.
you finished
I'm
the year, FY18 in deficit about 100,000. So this is the appropriation to fill that.
The one we did previously was for 17 and before that.
Correct.
Okay.
So this is for 18.
Yeah.
Then it'll be for, so we've got another 2 more of these to come. Hopefully, that's it. And then 2021, that's it. But we'll visit that. We need to give the airport a chance after they're done to assess what their revenue intake is, and then we assess again at that time. But for right now, the explanation makes perfect sense to me of why this is necessary.
We'll bring oxygen for you, Councilor Borsch.
Any questions on the motion?
I need a motion.
Councilor Boschman.
Don't give me those evil eyes. Listen now. Council to my right, he's very right, sir. I was at that meeting, and he's absolutely right. And everybody thinks that I'm trying to close down the airport. It's not my intent to close down the airport. My intent is the towns and cities that are benefiting from the airport should be helping us. Why should the taxpayers pay? Now, on $102,000, I was doing some math. At $4,000 a home, that's 25 homes. We could have said, hey, let's put your names in the hat and pick it out. No taxes this year for one whole year, 25 names. That's $100,000 at $4,000 a home. So that's not bad, because we're doing the same thing here. We're helping the rich and the famous with their toys to drive around in the sky while the taxpayers are paying. And I don't believe in that. I don't see it that way.
Hopefully, the newspapers aren't going to pick that up, because we want these people with toys to use the airport to keep them operational and profitable. So
Well,
the
we need a
taxpayers
restaurant.
don't have to pay for it.
We need a restaurant because they're not coming here anymore.
Counselor, the manager just stated that there will be double the acreage, where those plans will be in place to use that acreage for commercial use. He already made that clear.
I heard that,
Well, then you shouldn't have to worry.
but it takes money.
I'd also like to answer Councilor Boschman. The airport was owned at one point by the city of Leominster and the city of Fitchburg jointly. Until 1942, it was known as the Fitchburg-Leominster Airport. The city council in 1942 voted to take the entirety of the airport over in exchange for the No-Town Reservoir, which was given to the city of Leominster. We took the responsibility of the airport in its entirety at that point. I would love to be able to get funds from other towns. I would love for this to be a regional airport instead of a municipal airport. But that decision was made a long time before I became the manager. I'd also like to comment on something that Councilor Zarella said earlier about kicking the can down the road, and things, if we waited, are going to cost more money. If these improvements had been made 15 years ago, when the runway should have been repaired, it would have cost a fraction of what it's going to cost us now. I also listened to the procurement officer here a few months ago talking about City Hall, that if we had acted on it 15 years ago, it only would have cost a few $1 million, and now it's going to cost $24 million. We are spending this money now because maintenance at that airport has been deferred for decades, and that's why we're in the position that we're in.
It's the usual backstory of our history as a city. I've been here 10 years, and to this day, after 10 years, I'm still having to vote on things to correct the sins of 20 years ago. I want to know when it's going to end. I don't know when it's going to end.
So do I.
So, lucky me, though. Councilor Zarella.
I'd just like to say that is exactly what I was talking about when I said we can't make someone take an airport. I would love to see surrounding cities and towns kicking in money for this. But what are we going to do to force them to do so? We can't just walk up to them and say, we can't even threaten to shut down the airport if they don't pay, because we can't shut down the airport. So what are we going to do? We're going to march up to the Leominster City Council and say, take half this cost off of us because ... Yeah, they're not going to do it. They've got no incentive to, and I wouldn't blame them. If I were on the Leominster City Council, I wouldn't take on that burden for nothing. My constituents would vote me out the very next election. So it would be great, but we can't make them do it.
Motion has been made and seconded to approve 919. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? One in opposition. Councilor Boishman passes 3-1.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Also, I'd like to extend an invitation. I say this every time I speak before you. If anybody wants to learn more about the airport, please come down there. I'm down there Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. If people have day jobs, I can make myself available on the weekends.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it. Next, I'm going to go to 1219. In order that there being hereby is appropriated the sum of $20,000 to be charged against available funds and credited to building, tax possession maintenance for the purpose of securing, maintaining, and cleaning tax possessions. Letter here from Commissioner of Building, Mark Barbadaro, on November 6th of last year to the mayor. The city of Fitchburg has stepped up its pace in repossessing tax delinquent properties. This increase has caused an increase in securing maintenance and cleaning expenses in order to ready these properties for auction. Since the tax possession account is now at zero, I am requesting an additional $15,000 to $20,000 to cover tax possessions until the end of the fiscal year. Yours truly, Mark Barbadaro. We have the treasurer of the city, Ann Cervantes, here speak on this.
Yes, I just wanted to let the committee know that the majority of the money that was budgeted this year in that account was used for the tax possession auction that the city held last month. Just a little over $16,000 was used to clean up the yards, mowing, brush removal, trash removal, and also cleaning out the insides of 4 buildings before they went to auction.
So these are properties that we have taken possession of because of tax delinquency?
Yes.
Through the courts? And we're maintaining and securing them with the goal of putting them back up for sale to get them back on the tax rolls?
Correct.
So this is an aggressive effort on the city's part to go above and beyond what we've normally done to clean up these properties and get them off our hands. So
Yes, to prepare them for auction, to make them presentable to the...
do you know how many properties was in the initial auction that we just had?
9 properties.
And with this 20,000, would you say that that's going to be another 9, give or take? Or is it?
The $16,000 or so that was spent preparing for the auction was just actually for 4 of the properties, the ones that had buildings on them.
Okay.
I do want to mention to you, though, that the auction did bring in $386,000 to the city.
In additional revenue?
Yes.
Okay.
The sale.
Great.
So it's just to make these buildings look more presentable to the prospective bidders and also to make them...
So for $16,000 of a city investment, we made $386,000. So we made $370,000.
Correct.
It's a pretty good return on investment. So, please keep us up to date on the next round in terms of, because we're gonna invest another $20,000, and it would be nice to know in the next auction what we get from that $20,000, considering we got a substantial number in the last round. So
The account is also used for other things besides auctions.
Sure.
You know, when the city forecloses on a property, for instance, it usually needs to be boarded and secured, so it would be used for something like that.
But this is a more aggressive effort on the city's part to clean up properties that we now own and get them off our hands than we've typically done. So this is one of those issues of combating neighborhood blight that needs to be, highlighted to the residents, that, we're making very good strides and we're getting a lot of money in return for what we put in. So that's a win-win in my opinion. So, Councilor Zarella?
I'd just like to also point out that from what I'm hearing, not only are we being more aggressive about cleaning them up and getting them back out onto the tax roll, but we're being more aggressive in going after these blighted properties, letting them sit for less time before we secure them. And frankly, I go out on my rounds for the zoning board once a month. I see a lot of the, some of the worst properties in Fitchburg in some areas. They are the source of a lot of the problems that people complain about all the time. Whether people complain about crime, which Chief Martineau has been doing a great job of driving down, but those are the properties where people are, congregating, basing out of, whatever. The quicker we clean them up, not only does it deprive bad elements of a place to use, but it also improves the neighborhood, which then improves pride and ownership. It's a knock-on effect. It cascades and snowballs. I would love it if we had the budget and the time to go after every single blighted tax delinquent property in the city all in 1 year. We don't, but that would be ideal. So I'm thrilled to see us picking up the pace.
I failed to ask if it's possible in the future, if you could give us for that list of 9 properties. You said we collected 386. We spent 16 amongst the 9 out of this account, but there was obviously back taxes and water and sewer bills attached to some of these properties.
Yes.
So we would probably have to factor that in on top of the 16 to get the real net effect. I'm assuming there wasn't $370,000 worth of taxes and water and sewer bills owed to the city, or is that?
I would have to look at that.
Okay,
to let you know.
that's the budget analyst in me, just to see what the real net effect is, because while we say it's 386 versus 16, well, these properties were taken back because they owed so much money to the city. So that'd just be something I'd like to see for the whole council as well, I'm sure. Yeah.
Motion to approve 1219.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 1219. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Thank you. Next, 1119, in order that there be and hereby is appropriated the sum of $45,544 to be charged against available funds and credited to community development, DEP compliance for the purpose of DEP compliance at city-owned property at 465 Westminster Street, formerly the site of the central steam plant. In deference to, I'm not going to read the letter from Mr. Sikorsky. I'm assuming Chief of Staff to the Mayor is here to talk about this and simplify what he wrote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Greetings, councilors. Happy Tuesday. Mr. Skorowski apologizes that he cannot be here this evening and asks that I attend on his behalf. 11-19 is for $45,544 to go towards the central steam plant located on River Street. Since the city acquired that property and knocked down the building, we've had an oil issue that's been seeping into the Nashua River. Although not the EPA, but its close illustrious sister, Mass DEP, is requiring us to come to compliance and maintain the booms containing the oil that's being released in the Nashua River, and it's hiring a consultant that does reporting on behalf of the city. So that will help get us through this fiscal year. However, we are working on, the Community Development Department is working on a way to help abate the issue and put the issue to rest. So part of that is back in October, this particular parcel of land was before you. It's been referred to City Property Committee, which I spoke with Councilor Zarello last week, that you guys will hopefully be hearing fairly soon, to put this property out to bid. Once it's out to bid and it's bought by a private entity, we'll do something similar to what we've done with the Fitchburg Arts Community. Do a public-private partnership between the city, Mass Development, and the private developer, where they'll apply for a Mass Development grant to help abate the oil seepage, which is estimated to be around $300,000 to $600,000, and then that price will be put on to the city through a betterment, if you will, with the taxes, and paid off in 15 years or until it's fully paid off. at a 15%, I believe it was a 15%, based on the baseline of the improvement.
Is it a fair assessment or estimate to say that we've spent at least $500,000 at this site since we took possession of it to abate this stuff, to mitigate this stuff? It's got to be at least $500,000.
Close. We would have to.
The demolition.
Well, with the demolition.
I'm not even counting the demolition. I'm talking about these
Just the
recurring
abatement
$40,000 or
itself?
$50,000 appropriations we've made. This is not the first one. We've done many of these.
Correct.
I want to say it's, not including the demolition, it's probably close to $500,000.
Right. I would guess, this
yeah.
has been ongoing for a while.
Right. So with the demolition, we've thrown in over $1 million on this property. So anything we can do to get this off of our hands,
Yes,
please
absolutely.
do. Councilor Boschman.
City planning on going after the insurance company that owned this building way back when, because it had to be insured at one time. And the contaminated oil that's coming out of the ground was their responsibility, just like if I fall on your property and I hurt my back, a couple of years later, I go back after you because I hurt my back. Why aren't we doing that, going after them?
You want me to answer that?
Please. Oh,
I can answer that a bit. The city acquired the property through a sale. We purchased the property from Massachusetts Paper Company, I think was the original owner. They were in bankruptcy at the time, so we paid $1 essentially to acquire the property. So I think just on that basis, with a bankrupt company no longer in existence, we purchased it. We didn't take it through taxes or anything like that. We own it.
I understand what you're saying, but I was just thinking about the Grace Company in Boston. I remember reading a story on that, or seeing a movie where people went after Grace even though they went out.
I think it's the way we acquired it and from whom we acquired it. I think there's nothing there.
All right, that's all I asked.
Mr. Chair, I just wanted to quickly clarify my last statement. Through the Mass Development Grant, the city will be required to pay 15% of the increased value of the parcel for a period of 30 years, not 15.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 1119. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous.
Thank you, councilors.
Next item is 00719, in order that there be and hereby is appropriated the sum of $350,000 to be charged against available funds and credited to the city's stabilization account. This will bring the balance in that fund to just over $6.5 million, which is slightly more than 5% of the FY19 general fund budget. And correct me if I'm wrong, Auditor Books, the DOR benchmark is to have at least 5%.
Right. The range is 5 to 7%.
5 to 7%. So this will keep us above 5%. This is essentially our rainy day emergency fund, which, for those that recall, 10 years ago was at 10,000. It's now over 6.5 million. And this is an account that should never, ever not be put into. So I think this mayor and any mayor after him, the first appropriation they should make anytime available funds are certified is into this account, without hesitation. Councilor Zarella.
I would entirely agree. I think that despite how much we've been trying to get ahead of things and plan ahead, there are going to be things that come up that we can't possibly have planned for. Things that we thought were going to last 10 more years are going to break unexpectedly because that sometimes happens, or there's going to be Fitchburg weather that is worse than we expected because that always happens. And we need to have this. It's no different to me than running a household. When you have extra money, you take a chunk of it right away and put it into savings before you can accidentally spend it on something that you're not thinking about, clearly, because then you've got it. Then you can spend what's left and know that you've got that cushion. We haven't had a cushion in a while. So I would love to see this continue to grow. If we can get above the benchmark, that's even better, because that way, we can handle anything that comes.
I don't think we'll get above the benchmark because every year the budget goes up. So then, therefore, our percentage basis drops, so we have to bump it up to keep on pace. But The Stabilization Fund needs a 2/3 vote of the city council to appropriate any money that the mayor requests. And this typically should be used for emergencies, in my financial opinion, in terms of if we have an economic recession, state and federal wide, and that means less state aid, and we have to keep our budget afloat for a couple of years and not reduce public safety or what have you, this would be an account you would use that for, although preferably this would be used for one-time expenses. But, this is to cover us, because this improves our bond rating significantly. This signals to investors that we're being fiscally responsible with our books and that we're managing a comfortable reserve account. In the case that we do have a problem, we have coverage. If we don't have any money in this account, that signals to bond investors that we are a major risk to putting money into in case there's a problem. So, as I said earlier, this should be the first and foremost account we put money into in this fund before we touch anything else out of available funds. Council Squalia?
You touched on my question to Auditor Brooks. Is this additional appropriation to our stabilization fund going to maintain our current bond rating, or would you anticipate it might increase our bond rating, saving us potential loan dollars?
I guess I would answer and say it's not going to hurt us by putting the money in. The last couple of times we've gone to the rating agencies for ratings, we've done well. What affects us now tends to be more the economy in the area where we are. And because in the past few years, the economy here has not been as strong as perhaps other places in the country, we get a little knock for that. Nothing we can do about it. It's where we live, and this is what it is. But this certainly helps us maintain our bond rating.
Thank you.
Yep.
Council Boschman?
May I address Mr.
Yep.
Brooks? Mr. Brooks,
Yes, sir.
there's no problem if we go up to 10 to 15 million, right?
No. It's whatever the taxpayers will tolerate.
Well, it's nice to have funds. There's a couple of pieces of property we could have bought cheap. We let them go because we couldn't afford them.
Right. If we've talked about different possibilities for the use of the fund. I guess I look at it very simply and say, December was, Lenny, the 10th anniversary of the ice storm?
Right.
So if we had, I'm presuming that 10 years ago with the ice storm, the city had no money and really was scrambling to try and figure out how to deal with it. Today, because we have $6 million in stabilization, we can say to the mayor can say to the DPW, do what you have to do. We expect to get FEMA reimbursement. We expect to get MEMA reimbursement. We should be okay. But if none of that comes through, there's $6 million. Do what you have to do, and we can address that emergency and then go forward. That's really what this helps with.
Okay.
Motion to approve 719.
Second?
Motion made and seconded to approve 719. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Last item on the agenda, 00819, in order that there be and hereby is appropriated the sum of $250,000 to be charged against available funds and credited to other post-employment benefits, OPEB trust fund. This would bring the account balance with accumulated interest to $1.153 million. Any questions on this?
Motion to approve 0819.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve 00819. Just speaking on this item, I would say that this is the second item that should always have money appropriated to it. So the one we just did in this one, these should be the top two before he or anybody in his position does anything with the account. We have a $150 million unfunded liability in OPEB, and even though we have only $1 million tucked away in the trust fund towards it, it's $1 million more than we had 4 years ago. This account was created, I think, in 14 or 15, at the strong urging of the city council, I might add, because we had nothing in there. So any amount of money we could throw in here to pay future health expenses whenever we reach a situation, God forbid, that we can't afford it in our budget, this would be helpful. So this is probably priority number 2, in my opinion, on what free cash should be used for. And I'm glad to see that we're continuing to put money as much as we can into this. So The motion has been made and seconded to approve 00819. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It is unanimous. Motion made and seconded to adjourn. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We are adjourned. Thank you.